Welcome, everyone, to the Last Gas Fantasy Sports Podcast, coming to you live from the Gibson Truck World Studio, here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visors. And we are located here at Celebration Point in Gainesville, Florida. We're happy to have you here today. My name is TJ White. I'm the co-host with Brad Carmen. How's it going, Brad?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. 2022 already.
Yes.
It's a wild one. 2021 was a crazy year. It was good for us. I mean, some of the things that we're doing and having fun with this, this podcast and the sports show here live at Spurrier's. We talked a lot with my family and friends about how 20 was so tough with COVID coming in, and then 21 seemed like it was going to be turned around, and it's still here, man.
Now, hopefully 2022 can be a great year. I was just thinking back, to year 2000. When coming into 2000, everybody thought the world was going to end, and the clocks were going to stop and all that, and now we're 22 years past that.
I know 2K was gone. We lost some key figures this week. Betty White almost was 100 years old, and Dan Reeves, as the sports show, we like to talk about those guys with John Madden too, man. You lose, Madden. Those names are for sure kind of wild to talk about with how much influence they've ever had, even in the video game world now with regular world, and to see those guys pass is just another time just flies by, man.
Yeah.
So, it's a great time and great ride. We want to thank our sponsors, Archer Electric Services Company, Paisano Stone-Fired Pizza, Door-to-Door Transport, Gibson Truck World, and, of course, Viking Companies for their continued support of the show, Brad. They've been through us through the year, through everything, and it's been awesome, man. It's been a great ride. Also, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at lastgasfantasy.com, and on YouTube, Twitter, any of the social media platforms, and also on 39 other local podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Overcast. So come find us out. We're live on Twitter as well. So we're on all of them, Brad. We're still ripping and raring, man.
Yeah, we're getting ready. Now we're into the championship game. Anybody's still playing, they made the championship.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the fun weeks. Is you've battled all year. You've really worked yourself into a position to have a chance to maybe make your money back. If you haven't made your money back yet, or you're really trying to even try to fight for a 3rd and 4th spot to try to get your entry in. But if you're in that last 2 right now, all you want to do is gain this bragging rights right now. You want to call yourself the champ.
Yes. And even if you're not in the championship game, keep on playing. Play for the 5th spot. Play for the 4th spot. Yep. Play for the bragging rights that I beat TJ this
week. Yeah, no, and that's the thing is, it's crazy that you can have a great week this week and then still, have a bad week next week, but still be in the fun, still have chance to do it, still be in the championship. Like I had a terrible week last week, but it's a 2-week tournament, and so I've got a chance to redeem myself. So I went out, I looked on the waiver wire, I'm trying to find people, and I'm trying to, this is the last week for most people. I've heard a few of my friends say that they've got their finals next week.
Yeah.
And that's wild to me.
Yeah, to be playing in week 17 for the championship with, the last 2 weeks, and the teams already dealing with the COVID issues, already dealing with the injury issues. Now you're going to deal with sitting issues. Now that'd be a tough game.
I mean, that 18th week. If you imagine playing your last thing when you've got guys out sick with COVID with the numbers on the rise. You've got some teams already on win. Like the NFC has 5 teams that have already locked up a playoff spot. That would be a nightmare for me as a fantasy owner.
Yes.
And so we just appreciate everybody. Also, you can check us out at lastgasfantasy.com or email us anytime during the week at lastgasfantasy@gmail.com. We still will be keeping those alive. We're still going to be running those. We're still going to be posting things on Facebook, even throughout the off season. If there's any big trades, if there's any kind of suspensions, if there's any big moves, if there's teams doing this, if they've changed mascots or, somebody's hired somebody new, we're going to try to stay active and keep that going. So just keep an eye out there, look out there. And if you get your daily updates or things like that, you'll see us posted on there, Brad. And I mean, we'll start turning, we were off last week. Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope everybody had a great time with their family and friends. We were doing that. We let everybody recoup their batteries. Of course, yesterday was our Friday night going into yesterday. We always say the day of the Friday night is New Year's. Yes. We're now in the New Year's 2022. So, we're started right now. January 2nd, already ripping and go and moving into week 17. So we had 16 and 15 were the 2 previous weeks that we could recap. And we'll start with 16 here, man.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs are absolutely right back to where they should have been at the beginning of the season. Patrick Mahomes rang up the Steelers for a passing rating of 135.1. Sure. And Thursday Night Football show, they just beat the Steelers 36-10 and just really showed their dominance right now.
Yeah, and they're the hottest team in the league right now.
They are.
everybody's talking about Miami and their 7-game win streak, which is a feat in itself, but it's Kansas City. I think they're on a 9-game. I think it's 9-game win streak right now. I think they were sitting 5-4 when they did that, or not 5-4. I think it was 3-4 actually, and now they're at 11 or 12-4, whatever that is. And so they are absolutely on fire right now, and they're probably going to end up with the 1 seed in the AFC right now,
which is crazy. Yeah, they're on an 8-game winning streak.
So it was 3. They were 3-4. They were under 500 when they started this streak.
Yep. Now they're sitting at 11-4 with an 8-game win streak.
I mean, they're playing well. Their defense is picked up. Patrick Mahomes is looking like an MVP player that he was, the last couple years. And they're finding their own at the right time. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can hold on to that top seed in the AFC going into it.
Yep. Moving on, Joe Burrow's uncorked 46 passes for 525 yards. Whew. Trashing the Baltimore defense and just really making an impressive game.
No, Brad, he has been unbelievable right now. And I watched a couple of recap shows of the NFL, like, prime time and some things like that. And a couple of the analysts have him in the top 5 of QBs this year.
Yeah.
They have him, of course they have Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, Allen, and they had him at 5. They had Burrow at 5 on that. And I'm thinking, that's wild to think with how well Stafford's playing, with how well Wentz has played with Indy coming out of there. I mean, and you don't even have Lamar Jackson in that conversation. So to think about how well he's played and how well he's done after coming back with the knee issue last year that he went out half the season. So, I mean, he's got the Bengals in first in that AFC division.
Yeah, and Jamar Chase has just been going off with him, and he's found that connection with Chase and everything. But this week was Chase and Higgins, both those were 23 targets for both of them clearing over 100 yards.
Yeah, Jamar Chase has been – that connection with them from LSU is definitely paying dividends to Cincinnati. And they both are phenomenal receivers and route runners. And the same group said that athletic weapons – for Cincinnati between Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is probably some of the most athletic at that position in all of football. And to have Joe Burrow have them, it's Cincinnati's going to be tough to deal with for quite a few years to come.
Higgins, Boyd, and Joe Mixon all caught passes for over 50 yards in the game.
Wow,
which is
I mean, and we talked about it a little bit. Is that they have dominated the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah,
I mean, just smoked them every game this year. In both games, I think he threw for over 400 passing yards in both games. And this one, he went for over 500. And he was 40 yards, I think is what the number was, from setting the NFL single-season passing record yards. For a single game.
Yeah.
So he would have – can you imagine that?
No.
That would have been nuts.
That would have been pretty cool. The Washington football team got embarrassed on national television by Dallas.
Yep.
They went down 42-7 in the first half, and they were just never really in this game and losing it 56-14.
Yeah, no, that was I turned it on in the first half, and I said, what is going on? And there was a fight on the sideline for Washington. They didn't get along together. Dallas looked strong. When we talked about it 3 weeks ago and how the last 4 games set up, they had Washington and then a game and then Washington and then whoever they got next week, I think it's like Philly or somebody like that. And we talked about how this is going to come down to these 2 games against Washington. And they've absolutely shown, after winning the close one, 22, I think it was 22-18 or 24-20, whatever the first game was.
Yeah, we talked about this. Washington kind of controlled their own destiny in this league, and they showed it that they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And Dallas just dominated this last game. The first game wasn't, as dominant, and now Dallas just dominated this last game.
Well, that first game was a little question mark too. It
Yeah.
was, they went up big early, I think 21-3, and then Washington fought back with a couple late touchdowns, and Dallas hung on for that win. And it seems like, this is the week that's going to be interesting for me with Dallas because they play Arizona.
Yeah.
And both of those teams are fighting for higher seeds in the playoffs.
Because Dallas is 1 game out of first.
Right, 1 game out of first, and same with they're 10-5.
Right.
So they're not fighting for that bye spot, but they're fighting for the division championship because they're still in it with LA, and LA's higher than them.
Correct.
So it's going to be see who does Dallas take a relaxed break and realize that they're going to be playing first round, or are they going to go for it and hope that Green Bay loses?
Yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, Dallas needs to win and to try to get that bye.
Yep.
Dak's a little banged up. Zeke's banged up. Let's get the rest in there.
Yeah, and so that's if they can get that win and put the pressure on Green Bay to have to win. I mean, that would be an interesting way to do it. Nobody wants to give Green Bay a 2-game cushion by any means.
No. Despite missing the 2 of his top 3 receivers, Josh Allen still went up and down the field against the Patriots defense without too many changes, winning 33-21 Buffalo over New England.
Yeah, and this is a huge division game there. That's put them in first in the AFC. You know, with New England losing 2 in a row now.
Yeah.
They were 9-3. Now they're 9-6. I think is what both of them are. So they've lost 3 in a row. I think is what it is. And so when you look at that, it's the Patriots are trending in the wrong direction at the wrong time, and in a league that there's so many teams. I think we talked about it, 13, 14 teams that are still in the playoff hunt. There's no way you can think about that. You have to win every game. You can't take these games off and lose these games. And it would be a shame to see the Bills not make it if that loss to Jacksonville earlier in the season cost them. But right now they're in the driver's seat. They have first in their division. All they got to do is win out the next 2, and they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, you know, we're talking about these streaks. You got the Kansas City going on an 8-game streak. You know, you have Miami going on a 7-game streak. New England was on a big streak until they started losing the last couple. Even Arizona went on a large streak, and now they've lost 3 in a row.
Yeah, no, and it's weird that happens because you wonder what it reminds me of cornhole a little bit, Brad, a little bit where when you have control of the board and you have control of the hole, you seem to always take a lead. When you're in football and you're winning games, you always seem to be able to take that next step forward and always feel like your confidence is going to win. When they start losing, the team loses a little bit of confidence. Maybe the coach and staff loses a little bit of confidence. The fans get aggravated. You hear about it on social media and Twitter and things like that. So that has to come into play here, right?
Yes, it does.
So
Carolina was taking on the Panthers, and Leonard Fournette was out, so they were relying on Ronald Jones, and it's kind of scary sometimes when you got to rely on Ronald Jones. And they gave the ball to Vaughn in the first half, and he ran 55 yards to score. And then they decided to go back to Ronald Jones, and Ronald Jones ended up with a decent game, 65 yards and a touchdown, as the Tampa Bay beat the Panthers 32-6.
Yeah, and that wasn't a pretty game. Tampa was losing a bunch of players. You know, it's nice to get a win when you're supposed to get a win. That's the thing that matters is they did get that. The thing that I was surprised about was everybody thought Ronald Jones was going to have a monster day. Like just check marked it. It's going to have 100 yards and 1 TD. Just put it in your books and put him in your fantasy lineup. And he didn't, and he didn't. They just kind of slowly did what they do and use this. I talked about it. I didn't write it on my sheet though. But AB had 10 receptions for 100 yards.
He came back with a great game.
Yep. And one of the questions I'm going to ask you, Brad, as we move forward is, I'll ask it now. Can you trust AB?
Yes.
I mean, moving into the playoffs. I mean, that was the thing is that with Mike Evans being reactivated this week, he's coming off of that COVID restriction list. Is he a reliable receiver to stay on the field?
Well, Tampa's looking good. You've got Gronk healthy back in it. You've got Mike Evans coming back off of injury. He's back playing. He's got a hamstring little tweak still, but he's still playing.
Yep.
You've got AB back now after suspension and an ankle injury.
Yep.
Tampa's looking really good with a full set of receivers and everything. But, yes, I think you can count on Antonio Brown. Now, looking back at last year, Gronk was the man in the playoffs. Yep. So,
well, I mean, you lost Godwin. He's out for the season.
Right.
You lost Fournette. He's out for the season. So, it's hard to think that you can keep losing players that have significantly helped this team win every week in and week out and think that they're just going to be able to pick up a guy and replace him there. And at some point, this is going to have to bite them. I'm hoping it doesn't until next season, but I feel like they're doing an uphill battle, and some of these other teams are just playing a little better and are a little more healthy.
I think the biggest loss for Tampa is going to be Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
Losing that running game is going to, they're going to put the pressure on Brady and throwing the ball. But I think, the GOAT's going to be there, and with the full activation of receivers besides Godwin, I think you're going to see, Tampa be able to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, and the team that I'm most worried about in the NFC is Green Bay. They've been hurt all year. They're still sitting 12-3, and they've got players coming back from injury that are going to be healthy, like Bakatari, and the cornerbacks and safeties are all starting to get healthy for that team. Aaron Jones has been phenomenal. Rodgers is phenomenal. You've got Devontae Adams out there. That team is dangerous right now, and they're going to be tough to beat.
coming into the last 2 seasons, Aaron Rodgers has always been on the talk about, is he going to be traded? Is he going to be done? But he always goes out there and plays for that team, and they've been successful. Again, he's in the talk for the MVP again. I mean,
and if that coach doesn't win the coach of the year, it'd be a shame of what he's done and turned around that and done everything there. So anyway, it's wild.
And then another shocker is the Houston Texans. They go in to Los Angeles Chargers and just school them. I mean, Houston's been not a great team all year, and the Chargers really had a chance to kind of get back in this playoff race and make their bid for the playoffs. And they go in and lose 41-29. Now they're sitting a 9th seed in their division with 2 weeks left.
Yeah, and it's brutal, absolutely brutal to just get. And that was with Miles Mills, as the quarterback there, and he lit them up.
He did,
and it's just it was one of the games that I'm going to talk about here in a minute with the recap of who's disappointing, who's surprising thing, and that was my biggest disappointment of the game this week was that game right there. You know, we want to take a quick second to thank all of our sponsors, Paisano's Stone Fired Pizza. Whether you're looking for a quick lunch or a dinner destination to meet up with friends and family, Paisano's is your place. Celebrate life's most memorable moments with delicious dishes in either their dining room or yours. Also, Archer Electric Services Company. They're bringing you over 30 years of leadership and experience in both commercial and electrical needs in Gainesville and surrounding areas. Also, Gibson Truck World, located in Sanford, Florida. Go find them. They've got some of the best trucks around. Contact them. They're working hard today. It's a great day there. Or also, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visors here, man. It's a great thing that people are starting to pile in. It's a beautiful day here in Florida. I think it was like 68 degrees. The sun's shining. It might get a little cooler later. The storm might come through, but right now you should be outside enjoying this, Brad.
Yeah, they said when I was watching the weather this morning, the storm's going to come through this evening. So get out today, enjoy the day, enjoy this fantastic weather and these venues out here at Celebration Point.
Yeah, and also we want to thank Weeby Marketing and, of course, Viking Companies for their continued support. Viking Companies is your leadership and project management and everything that they do with starting projects and being just your all-around do-all, jack of all trades, as I would call them. So if you need anything and need anybody like that, a partnership, call them, Viking Companies. They're just great. Brad, but to go back, yeah, man, it really is interesting to see what some of these games and week in and week out, how they've changed, how they've done, and we'll talk about the surprise of the week for me. And it was the Colts beating Arizona. It was 22-16. The Colts had half their staff, it felt like, on COVID regulation. Their defense was depleted, and yet they somehow find a way to win and get into the playoff hunt again. And they are right back in the middle, square in the middle of the hunt. Kyler Murray was 27 for 43. He had 245 and 1 rushing TD. You had Jonathan Taylor had 27 carries, 108 yards, and Michael Pittman had 8 receptions and 82 yards. But this game was all about defense. They were both playing very, very, very conservative, it felt to me. And so it's an interesting way. And now at 9-6, Indy's right back in it.
Yeah, they're sitting the 5th seed. They've got the tiebreaker over New England.
Yep.
So they control their own destiny right now. Win a couple games, and you're playing.
And they're in it. Yeah. And they're in. If Tennessee loses a game and they play Miami this week, that makes that even closer to see who has the division champion versus the bye, and that could come down to the last week. So that game right there, to me, is going to be an interesting way to see how that comes out and how that turns out between that division, whether Tennessee ends up holding it 10-5 or does the 9-6 Indy do it. And I'm more interested to see how that's going to work. So,
well, a few weeks back we predicted Tennessee not winning that division.
Right.
They had a pretty easy schedule going out.
Right.
But losing Derrick Henry and some of their tough running back, and their ball handler.
Yeah.
Were they going to be able to be successful and win out?
Well, that's the thing too, is Derrick Henry is supposed to come back next week.
Yes.
They've talked about it on that he will come out and have a light workload to get healthy and ready to get some tread on the tires, as I would say, some wear on the tires before the playoffs start. So they're assuming they're in. They're assuming they're going to make it. I mean, they're the number 2 seed right now, but there's only one team that's locked in the playoffs for the AFC. That's the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. And
they're going to be in. So, you think about that. To only have one at this point in the season with 2 games to go, the NFL can't be any happier.
So, yeah, if Tennessee loses this week, Derrick Henry better be back next week.
Yeah, right. That would be wild because you got Miami would be at 9-7. You'd have them at 10-6, and then you'd have, depending on what everybody else does, it's going to be an interesting week for sure.
I mean, everybody could be sitting there around 10-6.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
before you blink an eye, that division could be a disaster.
And then everybody that's sitting out could be at 9-7. I mean,
yeah, think about that. 9-7, 10-6 might not make the playoff this year. That would be hard. The other game that I had as Brad is who did you have as your surprise game of the week?
My surprise was the Cincinnati over Baltimore. I expected that to be a little bit better game, but Joe Burrow, just like we talked earlier, came out and just lit it up for 525 yards. Cincinnati now sits as a third seat in their conference and looking strong for the playoffs.
Yeah, and they're coming through. I mean, that division has been a coin flip, and right now they seem like the best offensive team in that division.
Correct.
Cleveland's Cleveland. And one day they'll throw up 50, and the next day they'll throw up 3. You've got the Steelers just don't have it for me. I'm counting them out. I'm writing them off. I don't want to say that. I think that they have a good team, but they just can't seem to be worked together and put it all together. And it's not coming there. And Baltimore's been decimated by injury and just don't look strong on offense. And so if you ask me, this league's about offense.
Yes.
And defense will carry you a lot of games, but you need to score. And I think Cincinnati can score at will.
And they're sitting same thing, 9-6.
Yep.
With a whole bunch of teams at 8-7 right now below them. But they do have the tiebreaker over Buffalo. And they do have the best winning percentage in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, and look at that. Pittsburgh's at 7-7. Cleveland's at 7-8. Baltimore is at 8-7 right now, and they're not in the playoffs.
Right.
They're sitting as the 8th seed. And weeks ago they were 8-2, I think, or 8-3. They've lost 4 straight, I think it is. And that's bad.
Well, that's what we were just talking about with the Chargers sitting at 8-7. That Houston lost. I mean, that killed them.
Yeah, and that puts them at 9. They could have been easily in the playoffs, and now they're sitting on the outside looking in. So it's interesting to see that, Brad. The next game, the surprise performance that surprised me the most, Brad, and we talked about it a little bit, and you mentioned it earlier, it was that Cowboys-Washington game for me, and how many points that Dak put up. Dak was 28 of 39. He had 330 yards and 4 TDs. You had Ezekiel Elliott had 9 carries for 37 yards and a TD, and you had Amari Cooper with 7 receptions, 85 yards and a TD, and that was all in the first half.
Yeah.
I had friends call me, for the fantasy feedback and doing some things like this, and let me tell you my bad beats or my fun stories. He had Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and he needed 23 points, and he got 22.5 in the first half. And guess who sat out the rest of the game?
Ezekiel and Amari Cooper.
So he lost his playoff game because they scored so many points in the first half that they just rested him and didn't play him the whole second half. And, this is what we talk about. It's so hard to be able to predict those scores and those numbers like that, and same with, Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush come in and was service time the whole second half. And, Dak was sitting there, and I was playing Dak on my league, and he had 30 in the first half, and I was like, great, this guy's going to go off. Never touched the ball in the second half. And so, it's a wild world for fantasy when you think that a team scores 56 points and all the top guys don't get half that.
And then, that's kind of what we're talking about. You're getting down to the last few games of the season that they're going to be resting and stuff. But Dallas still has something to play for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they take another first half lead, you're going to see these guys rest. But I do believe this week they're going to be out playing.
I truly believe it too. I do believe that they're going to be out there for nonstop and really get it going. I just want to remind everybody, we're still got Facebook Live. Send in your comments. Write it on there. Send us what you got. I know this is some of your biggest week. I know some of you guys are out of it, and you're licking your wounds and you're pretty disappointed. Your team that you thought was the number 1 drafted team is now out of the playoffs. But still send those questions either on YouTube and Twitter. We're listening to them. We're looking at them live. We've got a couple coming in. Brad, the question that I have for one of them that I saw this week was, do you start Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews? And this is coming from me because I have these two, and I've got to start one of them. And 1 and 2 tight ends of the week. One's playing in the snow. I think Cincinnati's going to snow up there, I think, where that's Kansas City's playing, right? And the other one is just been balling out every game for every day. Who do you start?
It's hard for me ever to say sit Travis Kelce, but I'm going to sit Kelce.
Yeah.
And play Mark Andrews. Like you said, Mark Andrews is balling out right now.
And that's what I'm leaning towards. So I think I'm going to do it that way. But it's so hard because I sat Kelsey last time, and he scored 41 and really, really got me. But I figured, just like that, those kinds of questions, send them in, Brad. We're here to answer. We're here to help with that. Also, 2 other surprise players this week, Brad, for me, that I was going to recap and really just wanted to mark. And we talked about that Houston game, and you were disappointed in one of your biggest upsets, that Houston Chargers game. But the Houston running back, Rex Burkhead, had 22 carries, 149 yards, and 2 TDs. And he absolutely carried that team.
They relied on Burkhead, and it worked.
Yeah.
Like you said, Mills was quarterback. Burkhead took over the game and just dominated on the ground.
Yeah. And another one that was a surprise for me is Isaiah McKenzie, for the Buffalo wide receiver. I think this was his first big game of the season. He'd been kind of in the back, in the receiver 4, receiver 5, but with a couple other guys out with COVID and things, he had 11 receptions, 125 yards, and a TD. And to get production like that when Buffalo needs it the most, it's great.
And that gets into mine. Mine is Josh Allen and Buffalo beating, which was a red hot New England until the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Josh threw for 314 yards and 3 touchdowns, and a lot of that went to McKenzie.
Yeah, and so when you think about that, they've thrown the ball all over the place on there. For a while there, it was the tight end that was getting everything. Then it was the receiver, the other receiver that was getting everything, and now it's Tim. And then their rushing game is terrible. But when you have Allen playing as well as he playing, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. On that same note, with Rex, we were just talking about some of the disappointments for this week. It has to be that Houston LA Chargers game. LA, they're fighting for a playoff game. They're fighting hard. They're doing well. You've got Justin Herbert, who's probably the number 2 quarterback stats wise right now in the league, and yet you go out and you lay an egg 41-29, and now you're 8-7. Texas is 4-11, and you just don't expect that.
Yeah. Again, that is one of the biggest disappointments of the week. I didn't want to copy you, so I didn't go there. But yes, that is a humongous disappointment, dropping you out of the playoffs right now.
And it reminds me of the week before, Week 15's Detroit beating Arizona.
Right.
Even though Detroit's playing a lot better, Arizona's a top 4 seed in the playoffs, and you go out and lose to Detroit, and those games can't happen if you want to have a better seed in the playoffs, because otherwise you're going to be fighting for your tooth and nail, and you lose to games like that, man.
And you just touched on mine. My disappointment is Arizona losing for the 3rd straight week, actually dropping him to the 5th seed.
Oh, wow. Again, not even 4. Yeah, great. Yeah.
So, I mean, when you were sitting there so hot and pretty, you had just to win a couple more games. You were going to be the number 1 seed. You were going to have the bye, and now you're a 5th seed.
Yep.
So now you're
looking at playing the 4 seed.
Right.
Whoever that 4 seed is probably right now it's Tampa, I think is who it is, and that's not fun.
Now you're playing one of the top teams in NFL.
Yeah, do you really want to play them? And it might even be LA. It might even be the Rams. Could you imagine the Rams and them playing each other? It would be great. So it is definitely interesting to see that. Another question I had, Brad, would you start Matthew Stafford or Justin Herbert?
Herbert had a horrible game last week, but I am going to rely on Herbert and go back to the Chargers.
Okay, so you're going to go with them, see what he's going to throw. Like I said, he's the number 2 point. He's the number 2 from my stats. He's number 2 in the league in points. Matt Stafford I think was 6 or 7 for their fantasy points in that league, and so it's these kinds of questions right now are huge coming into the playoffs and seeing who's going to win, who's going to lose, how your team's going to do, and so it could make or break your season.
I agree. I just like you said, with him being very reliable, being the second point getter as a quarterback. I'm going to rely on him having a bounce back game and get him into my championship game.
Yeah, and so it's definitely going to be interesting. I was talking to a buddy this week, and one of the things that's definitely you need to pay attention to is weather this week.
Yes.
And we haven't mentioned it a lot during the fantasy jobs and drafts and things like this, but pay attention to the weather. You got 17 inches of snow in Denver, and you got snow fronts coming across the Northeast, and they're saying 3 to 6 inches of snow in DC and things like that. It's a very big factor on whether you're going to get passing, you're going to get rushing, you're going to do anything like that.
Well, look at domes too. Find out what games are inside that are controlled temperatures, because that's a big advantage for those running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah, and like we were talking about the Chiefs and playing there. Edward-Helaire is out.
Yes.
And so they're going to have their backup running, and they're going to be in a running condition this week, and so you got to know about that. So, we're going to go to a break right now. We appreciate everybody, and we'll see you when we get back. We'll talk to you then.
Gibson Truck World's expert team of sales and service staff will show you why we have been the pioneer of used trucks since 1995. With our 1-year bumper-to-bumper warranty valid across the entire United States, our exclusive 15-day exchange policy, and our $1,000 best price guarantee, it's easy to see why we're the #1 used truck dealership in all of Florida. Please call, visit, or explore our website today to see for yourself why we are the king of trucks.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Last Gas Fantasy Sports Podcast, coming to you live from the Gibson Truck World studio here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visors. We are located at Celebration Point here in Gainesville, Florida, Brad, and it couldn't be a better day outside. And even in here, it's just awesome, man. Hanging out with you. I hadn't seen you in a couple of weeks, all the vacation, hanging out with families, doing stuff like that, man. It's good to come back in here and actually talking out with them and hanging out with friends and family that are watching the show and people that are just tuning in, man.
Most definitely. It was a great holiday. Loved spending it with the family and stuff, and love coming back now and talking football.
You know, and as we talk through, we warp speed through that first half hour, talking recaps, talking about who are the disappointments and players that have just absolutely done great for them this week. You know, we want to talk to a few things. We got this week. This wraps up mostly of what we're going to be doing with fantasy football. Next week will be our last week doing the podcast show, doing it here, you know, being live on Facebook, YouTube. You know, we're still going to be putting a bunch of information and product and things like that out, but we won't be live on Sunday mornings starting after next week.
Yeah, I'm going to be lost. I'll be coming to the studio looking around.
You know, you're going to be like a lot of people, man. You know, when it comes to August and football hits in and spring starts rearing up and now it goes through and then the playoffs go in January and February, from March until then, a lot of people just are jonesing for something to do and watch and football, and it's wild.
Yeah, and what I'd like to ask of you folks out there that are watching is, coming up next year, what do you want to see different? What do you want us to do? Yep. How would you like to see it done? And we want more involvement, and we want interaction. So what would you like for us to do for you?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Brad. Bring feedback. You know, if you want to send us some feedback, you know, we love it. We've really enjoyed, you know, the last 17 weeks of talking fantasy football, talking how to do the right drafts, who to play, who to take a shot on, who to not hit on. And, it's been a really fun ride, and I think next week's going to be fun. We should have some guests in the studio if we can confirm that, and it's really going to be cool about that. And so we're really just enjoying it, man. And so as we go through, remember we want to say special thanks to all of our sponsors this year. I never want to forget them. Archer Electric Services Company, Paisano's Stone Fired Pizza, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, Gibson Truck World, located in Sanford, Florida. Also Viking Companies, and they've really been a great support and support system for us this year.
Yeah, all of our sponsors have been terrific. Thank you so much for participating in our program and stuff like that. You guys, we couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah. And so also remember, you can still find us right now live on Facebook and YouTube at Last Gas Fantasy Podcast. Also, you can find us on Twitter and all the social media platforms and any podcast during the week. I still go back and listen to see, what we talked about, how we did, what players were good and bad. And it's a great place just to find them out through the middle of the week if you want to listen to something.
Yep.
Well, talking about injuries, I know you're a little banged up. You're playing through an injury right now. So
Well, that's what I was going to start out with. First injury is Brad Carman. He's active but limited.
You're doubtful today? Okay. I love it. Good to see you on here. Good to see you going through it.
But getting to the serious ones.
Yep.
We get the quarterbacks. We got Lamar Jackson for Baltimore.
Yep.
He's questionable for Sunday's game. It looks like he's really actually going to be more doubtful than questionable.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins is out for Minnesota. Carson Wentz, he cleared the COVID protocol for Saturday, but remains questionable. Last thing I did see on that, it looks like he is going to be active.
Yep.
Jimmy Garoppolo, thumb is doubtful.
Okay.
Teddy Bridgewater, concussion is out. Jared Goff, knee is doubtful. Justin Fields, ankle is questionable for Sunday's game.
And that's the thing. I picked Chicago to win that game, so I think he'd be a nice little change of pace if he gets to play in that game for sure.
Yeah, if he doesn't go, it's an Andy Dalton game,
Yep.
Which changes their whole concept of their how they play. That was like last year when Dak went down and Andy had to step in. I don't understand why these teams have these different quarterbacks. Why not have your same system?
Right.
So
Well,
look at
the Ravens.
Yes.
Huntley has been a phenomenal backup to Lamar Jackson. He's produced and he's played well. He's going to have a starting role possibly next year if he's not careful.
Because they don't have to change their game plan.
Yeah.
They go in and Huntley runs the same thing Lamar would have ran.
Yeah, and he's got a cannon too.
Yes.
He's been playing very, very well. So,
And your running backs, Antonio Gibson remains on the COVID protocol, so he's out. Cam Akers is questionable for Sunday's game. Damian Harris, hamstring, questionable. Miles Sanders, hand is out.
okay.
Elijah Mitchell, knee is questionable. Kareem Hunt, ankle is questionable for Monday's game. Alex Collins, abdomen is questionable for Sunday's game. Mark Ingram is questionable. James Conner is questionable. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, shoulder is out
Yeah,
for
he's
Sunday's
out.
game.
So Damian Williams, look for Damian Williams when you're looking for add and wire picks.
Pickups.
He would be a great name to pick up.
Melvin Gordon, hip and knee is questionable. Javonte Williams, knee is questionable. Jordan Howard, neck is questionable. David Johnson remains on the COVID list and is out for Houston.
Okay.
A lot of running backs.
Yeah, a lot of running backs right now that
Right.
you've got to find out a way to pick it up. And sometimes those are the guys that really are. You've been your workhorses all year long in the fantasy. And so, make sure you're out there looking on the waiver wire, picking up players, keeping your active. You want to make sure that you're still finding players that can help you win a championship. I picked up a player on a waiver wire this week, and that was a question that I was going to ask Brad, and I got it asked from me by someone that called in and emailed me at lastgasfantasy@gmail.com, and they said, do we start Michael Pittman or A.J. Brown? And Michael Pittman is, of course, the wide receivers for the Indianapolis Colts. Right. And you got A.J. Brown. He was out for quite a few weeks at the COVID thing. Comes back last week, has a monster game at 11 receptions, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Pittman's been a staple all year. So, who do you like?
Now, that's a tough one, but I'm going to go with A.J. Brown on that one.
Yeah. And so, and that's the thing. He's probably available in most leagues right now.
Yeah.
And so go out there, check him out. A.J. Brown, Tennessee Titans wide receiver. He was a monster last week in their comeback win. They won 20-17, and they came back and won last week. So they're playing Miami. Miami's secondary is a little bit susceptible to big plays, and they blitz a lot. So if they can get the ball out, then he could have a monster day.
into the wide receivers, we talked
Yep.
about these two guys, Mike Evans and Antonio Brown. They both are listed as questionable, but I've heard that both are active this week.
Yep.
Adam Thielen, ankle is placed on injured reserve, so he's gone. Marquise Brown, illness questionable. Jerry Jeudy remains on the COVID protocol. He's out. Tim Patrick for Denver Broncos protocol will not play Sunday. Cortland Sutton, illness questionable for Sunday's game. Curtis Samuel, hamstring questionable for Sunday's game.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Sanders, knee questionable for Sunday's game.
Wow.
Aguilera, concussion, is out. Crowder is doubtful. Tyquan Smith is out. Josh Reynolds, I had him playing this week, but he's out with COVID. And again, another long list.
Yep.
Kadarius Toney,
Yep.
shoulders out. These guys are the guys that you guys have been playing every week, and it's just again when we get to the injuries and the COVID list,
And then
it
you
just
have
grows.
and then you have the week 17 sits and buys. It's a lot of work. One name also too to look at is the Lions quarterback Jared Goff is doubtful. He's got a knee injury too, so make sure you're paying attention on that with the Lions and things like, I still have the Seahawks to win that game, but still, if you are a Lions fan and you want to know that and you want to find a backup quarterback that might do well, look for the backup there against the Lions.
On your tight end list, I'm going to go through them real quick. Waller and Cook are both out.
Yep.
The rest of the guys look like they're going to play. So you do have Dan Arnold and Vanette out with the COVID
Yep.
on the COVID list. But it's getting tough out there.
It's a battle of attrition right now, as they would say. I want to thank our sponsors, Archer Electric Services Company. They bring you over 30 years of leadership and experience in both commercial electric needs in the surrounding Gainesville areas and communities. Also, Paisano's Stone-Fired Pizza, whether it's a quick lunch or dinner destination to meet up with friends and families, Paisano's is your place to celebrate life's most memorable moments, whether it's dishes that come into your dining room or ours. Also, I want to thank Viking Companies and Gibson Truck World of Sanford, Florida, for their continued support of the show, and we couldn't do it without them. And so, thank you. Go check them out on our webpage at lastgasfantasy.com, and they're good. So go check them out. Call them up. Tell them that you heard about them on Last Gas, and let them know. Brad, it's great, man.
Yeah, it's great. Hey, real quick, on the AFC, we talked about, man, the playoffs is wide open. There's only one team that clinched so far, which is Kansas City, which was surprising as they started out the year pretty rough.
Yep.
And then you look in the NFC, and every position is clinched so far except for two.
Yep.
You have the 49ers, Philadelphia sitting in the 6 and 7 spot, with Minnesota and Atlanta and New Orleans sitting at 8, 9, 10, one game back. Only other team that's still somehow alive is Washington at 6 and 9, but it would take a miracle. So who gets those last two spots in the NFC?
So, to me, it's got to be San Francisco and Philadelphia are going to get them. I think those two teams are right there right now. I think they're the teams that are playing decent games this week that they should win. And when we talk about pick 'em and stuff like that, that's who we're trying to decide who's playing. Philadelphia is at Washington. And then, you've got the other game, which what we were talking about right there, is Houston is at San Fran. So, both those games are winnable games for those teams. So they should be able to handle their business. They should be able to do their job. And so I like those two coming out of those as the last two seeds in the NFC.
Yeah, one loss by either of them. Minnesota's right there. Now, Minnesota does not have Cousins today.
And they have Thielen. Adam Thielen's out. Their receivers
Right.
out. They still have Diggs, but still, it's going to be it's an uphill battle for them. And I just don't. I don't think it matters who the last teams here are. What matters to me is who the top 5 are in this division.
Yeah, but I do feel if Minnesota can make this and get Thielen and
Yep.
Cousins healthy, they could make a run.
My concern would be if the Saints sneak in.
Yeah.
If the Saints sneak in, then their defense knows Tampa and Green Bay. And so if you would imagine if Tampa were to move to the 2 seed, if Dallas and the Rams lost or something like that, and New Orleans snuck in as the 7 seed, that means Tampa and New Orleans play first game as the divisional game. And we haven't scored a point on them all season.
No.
And so that would be a nightmare scenario for my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm sure we'd break 7 window Surface Pros that game because Tom Brady would be throwing them all over the field for whatever reason. Peyton knows that system and knows how to beat them.
Well, you're lucky because Minnesota and Atlanta have the tiebreaker over New Orleans.
Right.
So they both would. So you've got to have 4 teams lose.
Yep.
For New Orleans to get it. Not unheard of. We've
Right.
got 2 games left this year, 17
Well,
and 18.
if Minnesota loses, Atlanta loses, and they win, they're all 8-8, right? And then San Fran and Philly, if they were to lose this week, depending on who they're playing,
Yeah.
you'd have 5 teams at 8-8. Depending on how that goes, and that could be one heck of a final week of football, depending on who they all play. And I think a lot of teams are playing divisional rivals the last week. The NFL set that up to where you're playing your own division on the last week, so it could definitely make for a fun final week 18.
Yes.
So
we talked earlier in the year what the importance of week 18 is. Well, here it comes.
yeah, and NFL couldn't have wrote it up any better, having 11 from one division and 13 from another division still actively playing for for the playoffs 2 weeks to go in the season. They're making out like fat cats on this.
They are.
And so, I think this will lead us into pick'ems, Brad. We were just talking about that, who we think is going to be good, who thinks bad. There's a lot of games this week. They all play today except one, which is that Cleveland-Pittsburgh game on Monday night. So if you're excited about football and you've got NFL Red Zone or you've got all that stuff, it's going to be a loaded pack slam day, compared to the last time we were on the show. I think we had 1 Thursday, 2 Friday, 3 Saturday, 1 Sunday. In a week period, there was a game every day except for 1 or 2 days. You know what I'm
2
saying?
Monday and 2 Tuesday.
Yeah, it was wild last time we were together. So all these are playing today except for that one. And we'll start out with Atlanta at Buffalo. I think it's going to be cold. It's outside. I think Buffalo should handle business and want to keep that AFC lock in.
Yeah, they got a 14.5-point favorite. I think you got to go Buffalo.
You've got the New York Giants at the Chicago Bears. This is where, not having Fields, and this is a game the Giants might be able to steal a win, but I think Chicago is the better team currently, and I think Chicago is who you go with.
I agree with you on this one. Outside Chicago, Soldier Field.
Yep. And the Giants aren't playing. I think they're playing Jake Fromm again. Is that who it was last week? So depending on how that goes, it'll be interesting. You've got Kansas City at Cincinnati. This game is probably the game of the week, in my opinion. Is one of the best games out there. Kansas City's coming on that 8-game win streak. Cincinnati's hold the division lead right now. Kansas City wants to keep the bye. Cincinnati wants to lock their higher seed. Who do you like?
I'm actually going to go Cincinnati, even though Kansas City is on this 8-game win streak, but Cincinnati has more to play for right now.
I also agree with you, Brad. I chose Cincinnati in this game. It's a cold weather game. It's going to be nasty up there. It was like a 62% chance of snow, and now that stats are made up 62% of the time on the spot. But needless to say, it's got to be in the 30-40 range that they said there's going to be precipitation during the game. But it's going to be a running game, and who can run the ball. And Cincinnati has proven they can run the ball all year with Joe Mixon, and the other guy they've got back up. Their 2-headed monster from the running back position has been great, and Kansas City hasn't proven that to me yet this year.
Yeah, this is a must-start Joe Mixon game if you're in your championship.
Yep. And so we've got that. You've got Miami at Tennessee.
See, I think this is going to be one of the best games of the day.
Really?
Yeah. Miami's red hot, 7-game winning streak. Tennessee's been doing well and winning. They need to continue to win because there's a lot that could happen in their division.
Yep.
I picked Miami.
Okay. I went with Tennessee. It's too much to me to believe that Miami can keep winning.
Yeah, 8 games.
1-7, and now 7 straight. Now they're 8-7. They're fighting for a playoff. I think it would be fitting if they lose this game, right? Tennessee locks up their division, makes it to the playoffs, and Miami beats New England next week to get into the playoff and knocks New England out of the playoffs. That's what I'm betting on. I'm putting all my marbles on that ship, and that would be just awesome.
And wouldn't that be wild? 2 of the longest streaks.
Yeah.
Coming down to the final game.
Yeah, right. And so you've got that going on. You've got Vegas at Indy. Indy's at 7.5 points. I like Indy in that game.
I got to stay with the Colts.
And they're still fighting for their division. They're still fighting for their playoffs, and they're on a little run too. You've got Jacksonville at New England.
Yeah, no question.
When you talk about a game that New England needs at this time of the season, Bill Belichick must have paid Roger Goodell off to get Jacksonville the last game of the season, because let me tell you, they've had a couple tough games now, New England has, and have lost some back-to-back, and there's only one team that you want to play to get your ship righted, and that's Jacksonville right now. So I think New England beats them by 20 and not 15 at least.
I got you there.
Carolina at New Orleans, you know, and it was a great stat you posted this week on fantasy on our Facebook page. Brad, I'll let you tell the stat. It was wild, but anyway, he posted that there hasn't been a Notre Dame quarterback in the last 21 or 2 times.
I think it was 22, but
22.
I have to go back and look at
the
stat.
and it was that has won a NFL game, and this goes back to 4 different quarterbacks. Ian Book, of course, lost on on Monday night.
Yep.
And it was going back to 3 other quarterbacks. I think Quinn was in that list.
Yes, he was.
And it's wild to think that you produced 4 NFL quarterbacks and they've had starts and never won a football game. And that is just crazy to me. I just thought it was a great stat you posted, and it's great for those things. And if you catch those things on our Facebook page, it's hilarious to see when you can find those and you put them out there.
24 straight NFL games.
It was 24 straight. Wow.
4 for Brady Quinn, 4 for Clausen, 15 for Kaiser, and now 1 for Book.
And think about that, man. And there's no way you could even think that that's going to be possible, but there it is.
But let me ask you, is Taysom Hill back?
Taysom Hill is back this week because he came off they were on COVID protocol.
Right, correct.
And I think Simeon's back too.
Right.
So it's not Ian Book this week, so you're not going to worry about making that 25.
No.
But I took New Orleans over Carolina.
Well, New Orleans has everything to play for.
Yeah.
And they have to go all out. I've got New Orleans in this one.
Yeah, and that's what hurt them on Monday when you're at home and you lose a game like that. Also, you've got the next game, Tampa at the Jets. I think Tampa should win this game. They're 12.5-point favorites, and I think that they're going to take care of it.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you. Tampa's going to win, but
Yeah.
you're going into New York.
Yeah.
Bad weather. And New York's not let anybody really blow them out.
Yeah.
But I do have Tampa winning this game.
Yeah, the 12.5 might be a little bit much there, so you might be right. I think they could not make the spread, but Tampa wins a close one. Next game you have Philly at Washington. I took Philly over this one, even though it's at Washington, and Washington's going to be looking to bounce back after that bad beating by Dallas. I just don't think they got the manpower to do it.
Yeah, I got Philly in this one. I think Washington's lost all hope.
Yep. You got Denver at LA. LA is 6.5. The Chargers have to win
I agree. They have to win, or they're done.
if they want to make the playoffs.
Correct.
I mean, that's the thing. If they want to make the playoffs, and Denver is on an outside chance. I think they're still able to do it right. If I wasn't mistaken, they're still in the playoffs, but barely. Yeah, they're the last team that could possibly make it. They're 7-8. So you think about that. This is going to be a game right here where this is all out for both teams, and hopefully having a chance for next week to have some major things happen. But I like the Chargers. You got Houston at San Fran. This is a must-win for San Fran. I think San Fran handles it and takes the win.
I agree with you. San Francisco wins. I do not think they cover.
Yep. That's a lot. 14.5 is a lot of
And
points.
Houston's found something.
Yeah. And they've been playing well. I mean, Arizona at Dallas. I'll let you take this one. I think we know who you're going to take, but we'll see.
I'm taking Dallas. I think this is going to be a really close game.
Yeah. So I took Arizona in this game.
Okay.
I think Arizona needs this game.
They do. After losing 3.
I think they have to. The only question mark for me is that it's in Dallas. And Dallas is very, very difficult to beat at Jerry's World. And with that being said, I think that if they beat them, they have to run the ball. Arizona has to run the ball against Dallas. And they have to use Connor, and they have to use Edmonds, and they have to get them involved, and they need to get to the edges so that they can get around Dallas's defense to open up that passing game. Because if they just try to let Kyler Murray throw the ball 50 times, Diggs might have another 6 interceptions.
If Dallas is not worried about the number 1 seed, Arizona wins this easily.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting because you look, this is another thing that these schedules matter. Green Bay doesn't play until 8:20 Sunday night.
Yep.
So they'll know whether or
Dallas
not they're 1 game back, 2 games back, 2 games up. Between Dallas and Tampa and all those teams already played, they can rest their guys. If they lose a game, it doesn't matter because they'll still be the 1 seed. So it's interesting to see how that turns out. You got Detroit at Seattle, Brad. we just talked about Goff being out. I think Seattle's, wanting to show some pride there and play a little harder. I think Seattle wins that, no problem.
I got to go Detroit.
Okay, going with Detroit, going with the upset, huh?
Yes, sir.
7.5. So he's got Detroit over Seattle. You got the Rams at Baltimore. Rams are fighting in there. They're the 3 or 4 seed there in the NFC. You got Baltimore trying to get in there. They're the odd man looking out right now. Who do you like?
Well, Lamar doesn't look like he's going to play. It's going to be Huntley. But like we talked about, Huntley's been really playing a great backup quarterback, and I take Baltimore to win this game.
I took the Rams. I like the Rams in this game. I think the Rams have just been playing well. I think that Stafford's doing well. I think they're going to bounce back a little bit, and so I like the Rams over Baltimore. I don't think Baltimore makes the playoffs, and that's my choice.
Yeah, if they lose, they don't.
Yep. Minnesota at Green Bay. Don't know why this is 7.5. I think it's because they feel that. I think they think it's because it's going to feel that Green Bay is going to take it easy, maybe in the second half or something. But when you don't have Adam Thielen, when you don't have Kirk Cousins, you don't have some of your other players, I think Green Bay has this locked up all day.
It depends on the Dallas game.
Yeah.
If Dallas loses,
Minnesota wins.
Minnesota wins.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that happening very easily. You also got Cleveland at Pitt as the last game. I like Cleveland in this game over Pitt, even though it's a 3.5-point favorite and you get that many points for being at home, so it's a coin flip. But both of those teams are still in the playoff. Both of those teams still have an outside chance making it. Who do you like, Brad?
This is going to be a Chubb versus Harris game. Whatever running back has the game, and I think Harris is going to have it. Pittsburgh wins.
So there we go. And you like Pittsburgh. I like Cleveland. I didn't get to gloat a little bit before we started that, but I've picked back-to-back 2-week winners now. I was 13-3 2 weeks ago. Last week I was 13-3. I won both my Pick'ems league. So I'm sitting on trying to go for making it 3 in a row now.
With some of these upsets, that's great picking.
Oh man, I picked some. It was a blast last week. The crazy part is the ones I'm losing are like the no-brainers. Right. That like Arizona, I lost when they lost to Detroit. Tampa loses to New Orleans 0-9.
Well, you should have guessed that one.
Oh, yeah, I should have known that. And anyway, that's what it should have been, And so, with a couple minutes left in the show, we just we'll recap a little bit here. Normally, we talk about something positive and some good things like that, but really, what we want to talk about here is just Happy New Year to everybody. Happy 2022. Merry Christmas. We hope everybody does everything that they wanted to do. They were hanging out with family and saw a bunch of friends and ate as much food as possible and all those things, Brad.
Yeah. And real quick, on Facebook last week, I posted 2 questions. Who was your biggest player that you chose in the draft that let you down? Yep. And who was your biggest player in the draft that you chose that really made your season? Answer those questions, because that's one of the things I do want to talk about next week is who were the big booms and who were the...
And we've already got quite a few responses on there with some of the players, and I like some of them because some of the answers were guys that I didn't expect to see on there, but it was great to see. And the one that was definite was the one that a lot of people too said was who was the number 1 pick overall in the thing. So that'll be an interesting one to talk about. But yeah, Brad, it's going to be a great week next week. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to recap 16 and we'll recap 17 actually. We'll talk about who has to win, who has to lose to make the playoffs, things like that, and kind of recap how's it going.
Yeah. The next question I'm going to put out this week is, who is your MVP? Not who's the player that you chose, but who's the MVP of the NFL? And I'm not talking about just quarterbacks and stuff like that. Who was the biggest impact on their team?
Yeah, and it's their team or the league. Right. Whether or not it could be is it a guy like Diggs from right. Dallas who has been their backbone there? If you can't think about the linebacker there, Parsons too has been all over the field. I mean, you got J.J. Watt that sets the single season sack record for the Steelers, and got Harrison that comes out there on Facebook and says, "Hey, congratulations," and things like that. So if it's any of those guys, it doesn't have to be an offensive player; it could be anybody, man.
Anybody.
So
Let's have fun. Let's talk next week about football.
Yeah, so we appreciate everybody showing up and listening to us this morning. We love everybody here, and we'll see you for the last show next week, and we'll talk to you later.